Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at SprinkledWithGlitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. It is time for another video in my One Palette series, and this time we are doing Christmas in July featuring the July 2023 Clubs of the Month from Spellbinders. I have 4 of the club kits here. This is the large die of the month. I'll also be featuring the Glimmer of the month, the die of the month, and the embossing folder of the month. And we're going to create 3 cards using one color palette. Now, I do this every month with these club kits of the month from Spellbinders. I think they are great products, and it's fun to kind of use a single color palette in different ways and create card projects, and it really creates a cohesive look among the card projects that you create. Now, I'm using several Spellbinders cardstocks for these projects today, and I will have them linked in the video description, so if you're looking for those, be sure to check that out. And I'm starting out with the Glimmer of the month and the large kind of main image there, as well as the 2 sentiments kind of nestled in that window area. And I'm going to foil these on some blue spruce cardstock. Now, this is not like a true green cardstock that you might normally think of for a Christmas color palette, but it is one of my favorite cardstock colors from Spellbinders. I think it's absolutely beautiful and it looks gorgeous with some ink blending. So I went through my normal foiling process here. I ran that all through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine, and look at these results. Absolutely gorgeous. I love foliage for Christmas time. I love like pine sprigs and holly leaves. I think they are so beautiful. And so this grouping of images, or this single plate, I should say, is so beautiful. And there's so many things that you could do with it. If you are a colorist, you could foil this and kind of watercolor over the foiling. Today, I'm kind of using it as it is. I am going to add some color, which is kind of a fun technique when you're using a darker cardstock like this. But in the meantime, I'm just using the coordinating dies to die cut the window out of this, and I'll die cut the sentiments as well. Now, earlier I showed you 2 pieces that were foiled. One I foiled in rose gold foil from the Glimmer line, and the other in the blush foil. I ended up using the blush foil. I think it looks absolutely beautiful on this blue spruce cardstock. And now I am taking the A2 layering dies from Spellbinders, and I'm die cutting this out. Now, I did use a larger piece of cardstock than I needed because it was easier for me to just foil this and then trim it down later and get a good image on the first go around and maybe have a little leftover cardstock than to try to line this up perfectly on an A2 size panel. So that's just my choice for that. I find that I actually waste less cardstock if I just use a larger piece from the get-go. Now, I've taken and blended a little bit of passion fruit ink onto this Dahlia cardstock from Spellbinders, and you can see that it just gives it a little intensity. And then to add some color to these foiled images, I've grabbed some colored pencils. These are Prismacolored pencils, but any colored pencil should work. And I'm just coloring over these images. Now, I am not being super careful to avoid the foil at all. I'm just kind of coloring. If some gets on the foil, I'll deal with that later. And I'm not trying to be perfect or add a ton of shading or anything. This is all about just getting a little bit of color in those images. And you're going to see that in the photos, the coloring is not perfect at all, but it adds so much dimension to this image when you just add that little bit of color. So my strategy for picking the colors was really just to pick colors that were similar to my color palette. And you can see they show up really nicely even on this dark cardstock. I forget how fun it is to use colored pencils on a darker colored cardstock. Now here is where I think I maybe made a mistake. I was gonna attempt to get some of the excess pencil off of the foil lines, and I used a dry microfiber cloth, and I went a little bit aggressive in some areas. And I think I rubbed up some of my foil because I was pretty aggressive with it. So you may just want to be a little gentler with that. And you can see the colored image there. Now I am making just like a simple window card. You could absolutely make this a shaker card. So I've added some foam adhesive along the back side of that and added that ink blended Dahlia cardstock behind it. And now I have a sentiment strip. I foiled this using the blush foil, and this is from the Glitter Wishes sentiment set from Spellbinders. And now I've grabbed a few little sprigs of greenery that I die cut from some vellum. These are from the large die of the month kit for this month in July 2023. And I just thought this would be kind of a beautiful way to add a little more layering and dimension to this card. Now I'm just tucking them behind the sentiment strip that has a little bit of foam adhesive, and those are kind of holding it in place for the time being. And then I'm going to go in with some liquid glue and just kind of squirt it in some concealed areas behind these groupings of greenery. And for another added kind of piece here, I've gone ahead and die cut the word joy. This is from the large die of the month as well. I've die cut it 3 times from some Tuscan cardstock and layered those up. And then I'm just kind of tucking that in that upper left area. And I'll finish off this card project with some of the iridescent, they're kind of an opally colored confetti sequin from Spellbinders, just to add a little sparkle and shine. I'm just adding those on with some liquid glue, kind of tucking some behind those vellum layers. And I mounted this entire thing onto a blue spruce card base. So that finishes off my first card featuring the Glimmer of the month for July 2023 and this palette that we're using to make all the cards today, which I'm calling Christmas in July, because really this palette could be used any time of the year. This is not scream Christmas because I haven't gone with traditional reds and greens. I've brought in some pink and some more like jade colors, as well as that golden yellow, which kind of gives it enough twist to not make it feel like it is super holiday if you use this on different projects. Now we're going to move on to card number 2. And for this card, I'm featuring this adorable large die of the month kit. I love this stocking and all the little pieces that you can die cut to tuck inside. So there's a lot of die cutting on this card, but I'm okay with it because I love a good die cut card. Now I'm going to add some inking to some of these kind of very delicate die cut pieces. And in order to hold them in place while I work, I'm going to grab my waffle flower grip mat. Now this grip mat is essentially one large photopolymer stamp, but this can be used in so many ways. This happens to be the size that fits inside the mini Misty, but you can see I've removed both of the carrier sheets so that it reveals a little bit of stick on the back side, which holds it to my glasswork surface, and a little bit of stick to the front side. Now this doesn't have adhesive on it, so nothing's going to transfer to my die cuts. It's just like one of your clear stamps. So it has enough stick that it holds everything in place, but not so much stick that you kind of ruin your die cuts as you pull them up. So I've just placed my die cuts onto this grip mat, and now I'm doing a little ink blending just to add a little bit of depth. For these blue spruce pieces, the greenery and the stocking, I am using evergreen ink from Pink Fresh Studio, and you might not think to use this evergreen ink on this blue spruce cardstock, but really it makes for a beautiful blend. It kind of deepens up some of the areas of this greenery and just makes it really beautiful. And you can see I'm using a 1/2 inch blending brush here, just a smaller blending brush, and it's giving it some depth and dimension. And I'm not having to fight with these more delicate die cuts. They're staying in place really nicely, but they pop right up when I'm done. So this is one of the first times using this grip mat for me, and I'm really liking it, I have to say. Now, I will mention that this is photopolymer, so the ink that's getting on this grip mat may stain my grip mat, and that did happen with the next color of ink. This ink color, not so much. But you can see I'm just continuing to add some shading to these die cut pieces. Now this is something that you could completely skip if you wanted to. If you don't want to add the shading and dimension to them, it looks beautiful even without the shading. I think these die cuts are absolutely gorgeous. The greenery can be used in so many different ways, not just with the stocking. But it is kind of another way to add color. So in the first card project, we added a little bit of color to our cardstock using some colored pencils. And in this particular card project, we're adding a little bit of ink blending to these die cuts to give it a little bit more dimension. Now, in this case, I am taking the gingerbread man, which I cut from Peach Sorbet cardstock, and I'm gonna really kind of change up the color of this cardstock. So I'm gonna go in a little bit heavier with my ink blending for this particular die cut because I kind of want to change the color of him. He's a little on the pale side for a gingerbread man. So I'm using the Pink Fresh Studio Gathered Twigs and blending that on, and you can see I get a nice kind of shading there on my gingerbread man. Now you can see I'm just wiping this off with a baby wipe, but I do have a little bit of staining. It's okay, it's still gonna work. And then when I'm done, I can peel this off of my work surface and replace the carrier sheet for storage, and then I'm ready to kind of start assembling my die cut pieces here. So I'm starting with this cuff of the stocking here. I've die cut that from Spellbinders Alabaster cardstock. Instead of using a bright white, I decided this cream would be a really nice kind of neutral to bring in to this. It brings a little bit of warmth to it, and I'm really finding that I'm enjoying using ivory colored cardstocks recently as a neutral or in place of a white, or even mixed with a white. So just keep that in mind and maybe give it a try. Now I'm going to continue kind of assembling all these die cut pieces together. I'm using liquid glue for the most part because that just makes it easiest. I trimmed away this bottom piece of the gnome, but I did not realize that you could just die cut this from the color of cardstock that you want the hat to be. And then the beard covers up that lower portion. So if I had just die cut this entire thing from the Dahlia cardstock and left it as it is, and then assembled the beard on top of it, it would not have even shown that peach layer underneath. So there's actually a slit in this die cut that helps you place the beard. So you just kind of take the beard and kind of slide it up into that slit, and then you have your perfectly placed beard. And this was a case really where I didn't understand how the die cuts work until I was playing with them. Now for the nose, I had die cut that along with all of the gingerbread man kind of pieces from some Alabaster cardstock. So I just used a Copic marker to add a little bit of color to that, which is a third way that you can add color to these colored cardstocks. And then I'm going to assemble the arms on the back side of this so it looks like he's kind of like, hey, popping out of this stocking, which I think is so much fun. And you could use this gnome in so many ways. And I'm going to take some warm gray Copic markers and add a little bit of shading to his beard. This seemed like the easier way to add shading to me because I could control it a little bit more than if I were to do some ink blending. Plus, I know that I like the warm grays for kind of some shading on whites and beards and that sort of thing. So I'm just going with what I know here. Now to soften out that line a little bit, I'm using the W0 Copic marker just to kind of soften that out. You can see I'm not doing any sort of fancy coloring. I'm just adding some shading here. And it just really kind of gives these die cuts depth and dimension. Now I'm going to start assembling the things on and inside of the stocking. So I've started out with my gnome on top, and then I'm going to start adding greenery. I'll just tuck in a little bit of liquid glue. I've die cut the word joy 3 times from some Tuscan cardstock and layered those up. And I am going to attach that to a sentiment strip that I foiled using the Glitter Wishes Glimmer set from Spellbinders. So I've just foiled that onto some white cardstock. And when I had my stocking assembled, I thought, wow, this is a lot. So I really wanted to put this on a 5x7 card instead of an A2 card, which I think worked perfectly for this. So I've trimmed down a piece of Alabaster cardstock, and I am just wiping down both sides with a baby wipe. And I'm going to place this in the embossing folder of the month for July 2023, run that through my Platinum 6, and then I have a beautiful textured background to place my decorated stocking on. I added that stocking on there with some foam adhesive, and then I'm adding my sentiment strip as well. And that Alabaster cardstock, by the way, measures about 4.5 by 6.5 inches. So it's just a little bit smaller than a 5x7 card. Now to create my 5x7 card base, I am going to trim this peach sorbet cardstock down to 10 inches by 7 inches. And then I'm going to take it to my scoring board or whatever you use to score. And I'm going to score on that 10-inch edge at 5 inches. And that creates my 5x7 card base. This is a great size card if you're looking for some kind of alternative size cards. It gives you a little bit more real estate to add some really big, kind of over the top die cut pieces like I have here. And you can see I added just a little bit of sparkle with those confetti pieces once again. Now for our third card, we are going to create using the die of the month. And this creates a really beautiful floral Christmas tree or holiday tree. So it has all of the pieces that you can layer up on top of the base pieces. And you can see that as you die cut this tree, you could actually pull these pieces apart and use them separately. You don't have to put them back together to create a tree. So you could use that greenery piece that I just set on the upper right hand side in kind of the corner of a little vignette or on the corner of your card. You do not have to assemble these together in a tree, which I think makes this even more versatile. So I'm going to just start layering up the various pieces. I love that Spellbinders makes it really easy by the shapes that they use and the pieces that kind of layer on top of other pieces to kind of figure out where everything goes. It's kind of like putting a little puzzle together, but don't worry, it's not a hard puzzle. Because as we've talked about before on this channel, I feel like I didn't do puzzles enough as a kid because I feel like when I do put some of these things together, like when I'm trying to position dies, I never have it going the right way. But this was really easy to do. Now I've die cut the outline of the tree and I am going to emboss using the detail layer of the tree so that it helps me position those die cut pieces onto the tree base. So I'm just using the sandwich that is kind of prescribed by the universal cutting plate system of the Platinum 6 to do embossing with a die. So instead of cutting the detailed greenery pieces of this detail layer of the tree, it's impressing those into the cardstock, and that will act as my guide for placing these into this tree shape. Now I am using foam adhesive on the back side of these die cuts to place them onto the tree outline just to give this some dimension. And sometimes I'm using a little bit of liquid glue on the back side of the foam adhesive to allow me to kind of slide it into the perfect position. Now I die cut the star for the top of the tree using some Tuscan cardstock, and I have a foiled sentiment here. This is from the Glimmer of the Month set that says, "May all your days be merry and bright." And I thought that was perfect for this little tree outline. Sorry for my head getting in the way. I'm just adding a few embellishments here. You can see I layered that on a embossed piece of Alabaster cardstock and placed that onto a white card base. And that really does just make for a beautiful holiday card. So there you have it, 3 cards, 1 palette, one of my favorite series that I do here on my YouTube channel, because these palettes really can be used with any products that you're creating with. And it really shows you how mixing in greater amounts of a certain color can really change up the way a color palette looks. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. I want to thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed these card projects, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. And I did want to mention the Spellbinders Club Kit of the Month signups are open for the July 2023 kits until the 27th of this month. So if you are wanting to get your hands on these products, go over and sign up now. Thanks again for watching. I'm so glad you're here. Let me know in the comments below which of these 3 card projects is your favorite. I cannot wait to hear. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. To subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. That's my little face there. And here are a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.